In this video, we'll look at how to create a minimap for your grid flow dungeons. So by the time you're done with this, you'll have a working minimap with fog of war and different overlays for your players, for your NPCs, and so on. So to start with, let's start with a empty grid flow sample. So this doesn't contain any gameplay logic. So go ahead and clone this scene. Alright, now if we were to play this, then nothing really happens. So what we want to do is, first off, we want to build a dungeon when we play the game. So let's create that logic. So we're going to create a game mode blueprint. So we don't want to create the game mode base. We want to create the we want to inherit from a class called game mode. So select that. And here we're going to give a logic. We're going to build our dungeon. So let's go ahead and find the dungeon actor. And we're going to save this to a variable. And let's go ahead and build the dungeon. We need to assign this now. So let's go to the world settings and then assign this game mode like so. So when the game starts, the begin play is going to run and it's going to build our dungeon. So we don't have any character attached to this, so let's go ahead and add this. So I went ahead and added a first person content pack from here. So once you've done that, you can add a third person, first person, anything you like. Once you've done that, open up the game mode that you have, go to the class defaults, and then assign the player pawn. So here, let's give it a first person character. So now that we have this, we're going to create a minimap system on top of this. So to do that, first up, you need to drop in, search for minimap, and drop in a grid flow minimap actor onto the scene. And here you need to assign a minimap template. So we have just search for grid flow. Just go ahead and assign this one. Alright. So let's search for this minimap actor that we just dropped and save the reference to it in the game mode. So again, get actor of class. And then promote the variable. Call it minimap. Alright, now before we set up the minimap, let's make sure that our player spawns after the dungeon is completely built, and our player spawns at the player start. So for example, if I were to remove the player start that we already have here, then we won't really have consistent results, right? We want our player start to spawn only after the dungeon is built and on the spawn point of the dungeon. So to do that, we're going to go back to our game mode, and here we have a function that we can override. Can start match, ready to start match. So as long as you return false, the game is going to stay in spectator mode, and it will start only after you have returned true to the in this variable. So you can have a flag here, we got dungeon ready. So we want to start only when the dungeon is ready, right? So we're going to set this to false, and once the dungeon is fully built, then we set it to true, and then the game starts. So first let's implement that. So before we build, we want to hook on to the on build complete event. So sign on. Right, let me do this again. So on build complete. So what this does is it creates a custom event for us, and this is going to fire whenever the dungeon has finished completed, is finished building. Then after that, we're going to build. Now before building, we might want to randomize the seed. So get configuration, set seed. So we're randomizing the dungeon every time we play it, and it's going to give us a new dungeon, and then we build it, and once it's done building, it's going to fire this event, and everything underneath this is going to execute. So once the dungeon is built, here is where we can set this to true. The default value is false, so the game is not going to start, because the function is constantly going to return false. And once it's fully built, then the players are actually spawned. Right. So we still have a problem in that it's not being spawned on the correct player start. So we need to specify that as well. So go over here and say find player start, and open up the find player start function. Here, this allows us to choose a player start. Right. So simply search for. We simply search if our dungeon is ready or not. Is branch from here. So if our dungeon is ready, then we simply find the player start actor, because we are spawning the player start from our theme engine, so we know that it's there. Find actor of get actor of class player start, and we return this. Otherwise, if the dungeon is not ready, we just want to return the spectator pawn, because we're still waiting for the dungeon to build. So let's go ahead and try this. So you see this works, and every time you play, you get a different dungeon. And it's properly placed on the spawn point of where it's supposed to be. Now we need a UI for showing our minimap, so let's go ahead and create one. Go to user interface and widget, so and drop in an image and scale it up. Let's say 700, and let's put the anchor over here. You can design it any way you like. So what we're going to do is assign a image over here, and that would be the material that we've created for the minimap. So let's go ahead and create a binding, and then we're going to create a variable here and call it minimap material, and set the type to material interface, and go ahead and assign that. So this expects a brush, so that the brush could be rendered here, and we're simply going to assign the material that we have assigned to this widget. So make a slate brush. Let's just give it a number. We want the resolution to be say 512 or 512, and then assign this. So this is a variable that we are going to set from our game mode, and this is a simple widget blueprint that takes in a variable, that takes in a material variable and renders it over here. And this is about it. So yeah, we need to assign this and we need to add it to the viewport. So let's do that here. No, I'm going to close the UI, switch back to the game mode. Alright. So first up, let's go ahead and initialize the minimap. So I'm going to take in a copy of the minimap that we have found and saved here, and we're going to create a material instance from. So you can use the material instance, or you can create it from a template. So it gives you more control on the template. You can design your own templates. So search for grid flow, assign this, and what this is going to do is it's going to give us a material that we can work with. Now this material, you can attach it anywhere on your world. I am using this. We are going to use this material for putting it on the UI. So let's go ahead and promote this to a variable. Call it minimap material. Right. Now let's put in the code to show the minimap widget. So create widget and then select the widget that we just created. And then add to viewport. So the owning player is your player control. So let's quickly run this and see if so we're seeing the minimap widget show up. So in this white box, we're going to apply our minimap material, and the minimap is going to show up. And we're going to do that after the dungeon is built. Alright, so once the dungeon is built, we want to do a few things. First up, we are going to build our minimap, because after the dungeon is built, we have the layout that we can use to build the minimap. So we do this after it's been built. So go ahead and get the minimap object and call build layout, and then now you need to specify the dungeon model and the configuration. So get model. Get config. So this is going to build the minimap, and it's also going to update the material in the next update cycle. Now we have the material, we have the widget, we have the material, we have Yeah, let's go ahead and save the widget as well. So we created this HUD UI. We also want to save this before we assign it. So go ahead and promote to variable, call it minimap widget. Let's link that up. So this is almost done. We have our minimap material, we have the widget, but now till now we haven't linked these two together. So let's go ahead and do that. So get a reference to the widget. Now if you open up the HUD over here, we have a variable in the graph called minimap material, and we're using this variable to assign a material to this box, white box here. So we're going to set that variable here, set minimap material, and we have a material already. We're going to assign this one. Right, so this is the material. The minimap material was assigned, however the minimap material was not updated, right? So you need to update it every frame. So go to the game mode and create a event tick and grab your minimap and go to the dungeons category and update material, and we will pass in the minimap material. So that's about it. So we have the minimap showing up. So now the next step is we want our player to show up. We want the overlays to show up for the players, for the NPCs. So to do that, you need to simply add a component called minimap tracked object to any of the actors, and it will automatically pick them up. So we have a right now, if you look at the game mode and switch over to the class defaults, we are using a first person character like this. So let's go ahead and create a child blueprint of that so that we can modify it. And then let's bring this back over here. Now we want to use this one. So assign that to the game mode. So in the game mode, I'm in class defaults, and we're going to use this one. So let's go ahead and open this. First up, let's increase the movement speed to twice as much. Now we want this character to show up in the minimap. So what you have to do is simply go ahead and add a component called minimap tracked object, and go ahead and give in an ID to this. So our ID is player, so let's call it player, and let's call the icon ID also as player. And then we go back to the scene and select the minimap actor that we initially dropped, and here you can specify different icons that you like to overlay. So we want to overlay a certain icon for the player, so add a new entry, and there's an icon here. Now let's run this. Right, so I added the icon, but I didn't give a name to it. So we want the name to match the name that we have specified over here. We called it player. So let's assign this icon for objects named player. So we see a player icon now on the minimap. We can change the color. So let's make it red. and now we want this icon to orient to the player's rotation. So we want the arrow to move as the player is looking around. So let's select the character and select the component, and here you have a flag called orient to rotation. So if I play this, we're going to orient to rotation. So depending on how you've designed your icon, you might want to rotate this, right? The base rotation might be off. Really depends on how you designed it in Photoshop. So here you see that I need to rotate it by 90 degrees in either clockwise or anti-clockwise. So let's try this out. So select the minimap. So here you see a base rotation value. Let's change this to 90. And this seems to be right. We're facing the door. So this is all good. Now we want the NPCs also to show up in the minimap. So let's go ahead and do that. If I open up the theme file, here are my NPCs, the ones that I'm using. So this is the NPC. Let me make a copy of this first. Copy here. And I'm going to get rid of the original one, use this. Now here if I add in so we already do have a minimap tracked object here, and it's tagged with the ID enemy. So let's go ahead and go to our minimap and add another overlay icon and call it enemy, and let's say we keep this. So you see these you can change the screen size to 16 maybe. And it just works automatically as long as the object is spawned onto the world, and even if the object is moving, your NPCs are moving, they would show up and update on the minimap. So now let's go ahead and enable fog of war. So go ahead and select the minimap and head over to the fog of war category and go ahead and enable it. Now you need an item that will be exploring this fog of war, right? And in our case it's the player, because we've tagged the character as player here. So let's go ahead and use this character to explore the fog of war. Now if you don't assign this, or if you don't if you give a wrong name here, for example player X, I've given a wrong name on purpose to demo this, you will not see your minimap, right? So also we need to assign a fog of war texture. So just search for fog. There's a default value here, default texture here. So let's play this. Your minimap is not showing up because there's no one exploring it, right? So this is one of the common errors that you might face. Just make sure this is correct, and you have an actual actor in the world with this tag so that they can explore it. So now you see that we have a minimap with fog of war, and we can explore it with the player. You can change the visibility distance, bump this up if you want a larger exploration area, and you want more or less of this. So you see complete, you can see more about this in the grid flow game. You have a lot of other features as well, like key lock, inventory system, And what I've shown in this video is a much simplified version where I've placed the all of the logic in the game mode. Sometimes it's better to place some of the client side or the viewport UI side stuff on the player controller, which is what I did in this sample. So if you want to get more information, you can look at this sample and see how it's done.